Well, hey there, boys and girls. Normally, I don't do reviews, but sometimes I go on YouTube and I don't see something I'd like to excuse me to see. Uh, I thought I'd do a short review of these fork-mounted wind deflectors that I've put on my Road King, and uh, and also give you a little rundown on what it took to install them. Now, actually, the installation of them is nothing to it. Just take a half-inch wrench, remove the acorn nuts, and slip them on there and go down the road. But I'm on an FLHR with a light bracket, and so I found that there was a few more things I had to do. So we'll run through that, and then we'll talk about what my conclusions were after trying them out. I've read a lot about this. I do a lot of cross-country rides. I'm talking 5,000–10,000 mile rides. And I've always had that problem of wind buffeting my helmet. So everything I've read about these things, well, most everything was positive. So I thought I'd try them and cut down on some of that buffeting. When you've been riding 10 hours a day in the wind, you get a little tired of that. If you wear glasses, and we got an instruction sheet with them from Harley-Davidson. The front of the instruction sheet is for these models that's specified. We're on an FLHR. The back side of the instruction sheet is for other models. So you take a look at this, you take a look at the deflectors themselves, and the instructions tell you what to do. All you need is a half-inch wrench. Now, if it's that simple, why make a video? Well, I'm going to tell you something. It's not that
Now, as I
simple.
mentioned before, installing these things is a piece of cake. 5 minutes. And you can take a phone call during that time, too. All we have to do is remove the 2 acorn nuts, which hold on your light bracket and your windshield hardware. Slip these things on and tighten the acorn nuts back. If you want to get real anal, use the torque wrench and put them to about 15–17 foot-pounds, or just use that half-inch wrench. But what you may find is what I found. I found that turn signal fouls the wind deflector. So, you thought you were going to just pop these things on, take a ride and try them out? Well, your plans changed. You got to move these turn signals.
Now you're saying, look, you damn fool, you're not making a video about putting on some wind deflectors. You made a video about moving passing lamps. Well, you're right, but that's part of the project. And it's actually covered in your instruction sheet with a little note. And they don't tell you how to do it. It just says that for proper fitment, you may have to move your passing lamps to the forward slot. So let's see what it's going to take to loosen these things up to move them forward. Now, there's a spherical washer under the passing lamp. There's another one at the top of the turn signal. Now, what we have to do is to get this loose. Well, there's a stud that runs from the passing lamp down into the turn signal. So in order to get it loose, you have to loosen that jam nut up inside this portion of the turn signal mount. And when you do that, this passing lamp and turn signal, they flop around every which way. It's worse than a drunk on a bicycle. But we're going to show you what it takes to do this. There's 2 Allen screws here at the top of this portion of the bracket. So you take your Allen wrench and you reach up on this inside one, and you really don't have any room to turn, maybe less than 1/8 of a turn. And there's some factory thread locker on this screw. So it's not a matter of just getting it loose, putting your fingers in here and twisting it out. Matter of fact, my fingers won't fit in there. The outside one's easy enough. So you say, well, I don't want to scratch up my chrome, so I'm going to put a little tape around this Allen wrench. Then you're even more restricted as to how far you can turn. Then you have an epiphany. There's 2 access holes up here, which are made to get to these Allen screws. So you take your ball end extended Allen wrench and you go through, but there's no room. There, it's in it, but it won't turn it because it keeps popping out. You try them both. The only way you can use those is to rotate this till you're in line with one of these access holes to use this. Now, if your bike's been sitting like mine has, never had a move, I've been 21 years, these things have never been moved, they're almost impossible to turn. So you just go back to this and use your patience to loosen this and loosen this side. Then pay attention to the next picture and you'll see what's under here. Now, as you saw in that picture, when the lower part of the turn signal mounting bracket is detached, there's a wire that hangs down through the stud and the jam nut. So that's where the Dremel and the 9/16 socket comes into play. There's no way you can use a wrench or anything else except a socket to loosen the jam nut that's up inside that housing. So what about that wire? Well, you got to get around the wire. Now, you know, if you've ever taken a sensor out of a header pipe, you're familiar with the tool it takes to do it. Now, I wasn't about to stop and go hunt a 9/16 slotted socket. So I went to my junk drawer where I've got a lot of tools I picked up and miscellaneous things that I really don't use that often. I'm not going to ruin one of my good tools. And I found this made in Taiwan 9/16, so just a 6-point socket. So what we have to do, we have to cut one of the flats out, as you can see right here. If you cut the flat out, then the points are the thinnest part, can you see that, of the socket. So your Dremel and your cutoff wheel, you cut down all the way to the base on each side and then cut across the bottom and pop that thing off. Now you got a way to avoid the wire and still get to the jam nut. Now I also took a file and filed all the sharp edges down where I wouldn't damage the insulation on the wire. But that's the tool you have to make to do the project. Now, after you've loosened the jam nut up inside here with your slotted socket, say that 10 times without your teeth in. You might think that you can just move the whole assembly forward in that slot, but that's not a slot. That's 2 overlapping holes. And I've got a little graphic to show you what that's all about. Now, underneath that passing lamp, you have 2 overlapping holes that kind of sort of make a figure 8. There's a little gap between the 2 holes. Now, the only thing that'll fit through that gap is that wire that was hanging down. So what does that mean? That means that jam nut that's on your stud has to come all the way off. There is no just loosening and sliding forward. So you have to take it off, lift the stud up above the light bracket, move it to the forward hole and drop it down.
the wire will go through this little space here.
Now I found that the reassembly of these things was a little more difficult than what I had to do to move the passing lamps. You got to hold the passing lamp and the turn signal and tighten the jam nut, trying to keep everything straight all at the same time, and it's like you need three hands, kind of like trying to give a cat an enema. But what I got it all done. I got my lamps aligned again, and so what I think about this, was it worth all the trouble? Well, quite frankly, it was. I was really a skeptic about this whole thing, and when I tried the bike out after I had reassembled, I was shocked. My helmet didn't buff, my glasses, I wore my glasses, they didn't jiggle, and I could see really well, even at highway speeds. Now, I did find one thing that was a little unusual. When I was riding the bike, I felt a little heat from the engine under my right leg behind my air intake. And that may be because of the change in airflow, that some of that lower pressure is behind that air intake, so the heat tends to rise up before it goes away. It wasn't uncomfortable. It's not a deal breaker. I looked on Harley-Davidson's website and saw that a fellow had asked the question if it interfered with cooling of the engine, and they assured him that it didn't, so we'll have to take him at his word. But I was pleased, even with the work I had to do to get them installed. So maybe you want to give them a try. So that's about it for this one. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace, love, rock and roll. Y'all all try to be nice to each other.